What's up, world? I'm here for another episode of Dreamchasers, which is a podcast I create to inspire people from all walks of life to create their dream realities. And I bring people like Zach Bolwa, soon to be Dr. Zach Bolwa, on the show to share insights, advice, and help people to create their dream realities because they're on the path and they understand the challenge of being a dream chaser. And before we actually get Zach on the horn, I'll give you a little background on him. So Zach majored in molecular and cellular biology at Illinois. That's how we know each other. And he has a Master of Science in biomedical sciences and is going to graduate from the Chicago Medical School at Rosalind Franklin U this year. So obviously very smart guy, and fortunate to have Zach on the show today. Zach, what's up, man?
How you doing? Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you got it. So the reason I wanted to have Zach on the show is someone who's in the podcast space. I feel like doctors, chiropractors, a lot of these individuals like you don't get the opportunity to share their wisdom, advice. We got a lot of these like Lewis Howes, Tony Robbins guys who everyone knows, sharing advice to people, and kind of you're in a unique situation. So you probably have a lot to share with our audience. So why don't you start by telling people about you and how you determined that you wanted to become a doctor?
Sure. So I think that was my determination to become a doctor was kind of pushed on me at a young age. Before I even knew what I wanted to do, I think my parents told me that I had always told them that I wanted to be a doctor. But, I think in the field of medicine, healthcare in general, it's something that you're just kind of born with. You just want to help people. You want to answer their questions and care for them when they're sick. And that's kind of stayed with me for a long time. And it has to, because it's a very, very long road. If there's probably a decent amount of knowledge I can impart upon somebody going through that path, but I think the most important thing is just to stick with it. If it's something you want to do, and medicine was always something I wanted to do, there's a bunch of hurdles in the way, but you just kind of pick yourself up and continue to go on. So I guess it all started for me when I was in high school, actually. Right about the time you're kind of coming to age and deciding what you want to do with yourself is when I met a mentor who set me on the right path. His name was Dr. James Nachman, and he actually was an old camp counselor of my father. And we had met after a basketball game, and my dad told him that I had wanted to be a doctor, and he invited me to come by and shadow him. And that experience, shadowing him and continuing to talk with him on a weekly basis, really confirmed my desire to go into the medical field. And so the thing that I can take away from that is that finding a mentor in your field, or finding a mentor that has the same kind of aspirations as you, is really, really, really key, because they kind of they've been through it most of the time, and they can understand the challenges that come with the long path of going into medicine or any kind of dream you're chasing.
So have you stayed in touch with him?
So yeah, I did. So this was when I was 16, and we continued to talk, and I spent time with him and shadowed him in his clinic until I was about 18. And then when I was 18, he invited me to spend the summer down there this was at University of Chicago, performing research, and when I had free time, spending it with him, seeing patients and whatnot. And I think that was a great experience, getting the firsthand knowledge of what it means to really treat a patient. And he was a pediatric oncologist, so kids with cancer, and it's very, very challenging, heart-wrenching field. But to see what he did with the patients and their families, and answer all their questions, calmed them, treated them, it was an amazing thing, and it made me really want to be a part of the medicine. But also, seeing the research and fundraising and everything that goes into behind the actual medicine and treatment was something that was very important to me, something that I felt like I could get invested in at that young age. So we've maintained contact. We did. Unfortunately, he passed away. Really, really unfortunate event. few years back now. I think it's about 4 years now. But up until then, we maintained a conversation on a pretty much a weekly basis. And he was the person who really pushed me into medicine, or helped, I would say, guided me into medicine more than anything else.
Huh. So how did he specifically guide you?
So, from the start, I think just showing me what it means to treat a patient and to treat a family and to be there for a family. So these patients were pediatric oncology. You think peds, you think 4 and 5 year olds, 2, 3, 4, 5 year olds. That's definitely true. You see patients that are that young. You also see patients for pediatric oncology. A lot of childhood cancers actually present in teenagers and even young 20s. So he saw patients from 2 years old to 25 years old. And the way he interacted with those patients was something that you just gravitate towards. If you saw the way he could calm a family, answer all their questions. This is the worst experience most of these families will ever go through in their lives. It's very scary. It's very humbling. It matures you in a way that I never saw before. I saw 4 and 5 year olds who spoke like they were teenagers, acted like they were teenagers, and sadly is because their childhood was taken away from them. And that was something I always felt that I wanted to be a part of, not the taking of their childhood, but I think the giving back of their childhood through medicine, but also through taking them on a trip to the museum or the zoo or what have you. But that experience working with him was what made me feel like medicine was such a special field.
Wow, that's incredible. So how have you learned to handle that mentally?
I think that pediatric oncology is a very unique field where it's emotionally challenging, and every day you come to work, and even if you cure 90% of patients, which is what the cure rate was for the type of cancer that he was treating, you lose 1 in every 10 kids, and that's a horrible, horrible thing, and it's very sad. And honestly, it's something that I didn't think I could do my whole life. I thought it was too challenging. So I didn't decide to go into that field. I didn't decide to go into pediatric oncology. And I don't know if this is the right time to segue into this, but I from an early age, I always wanted to, or from the earliest time that I had spent with Dr. Nachman, I always felt like I wanted to give back or be a part of what he was doing. So that's when I started my charity foundation. We've been supporting his cause even after his passing. This will be our 9th year. So it's been something that I feel very strongly about, but not necessarily something that I can do every day of my life. So,
well, tell people more about that.
Sure. So, I'd been shadowing him for 2 years, on and off in my free time. And when you're a high school student, you might think you want to be a doctor, but you don't know. So you have to have these experiences where you spend time in the field, especially in medicine, because there's so many different areas. You see so many different patients, different populations. So you have to really spend time in the field before you know what you're doing and know what you want to do. But by the time I was 18 and spent that summer performing research at the University of Chicago, I knew that I wanted to be a doctor, but I didn't know how I could contribute at that time. I obviously wasn't in medical school. I wasn't even an undergrad. So, actually treating the patients was out of the realm. But I thought that Dr. Nachman is somebody who I trusted very much. If I gave him the funds, I could help in that way. So what we started, me and some of my best friends, and it's grown over the years, now in our 9th year, is a foundation to raise money for pediatric cancer research. And my love, other than medicine and books and all that stuff, is basketball and sports generally. So we kind of combined the two things, and we started a 3-on-3 tournament every summer, and all the proceeds go to supporting pediatric cancer research at Comer Children's Hospital. And over the years, more specifically to Dr. Nachman's, to his plans, to the AYA organization there, and really bringing light to the issue that, so AYA stands for Adolescent Youth, and pediatric cancers, like I said, tend to occur a little bit later, especially his type in teens and young 20s. And that there needs to be more light shed on that, and more research funding towards those patients. And that's something that he was working on before he passed. Obviously, you see, 5 and 6 year olds, sadly, with at times with bald heads, and because of the chemotherapy. But we there's a missing population in terms of research dollars. So that's what we've been supporting, that cause, that research, trying to shed light on that population.
That's fantastic. How can people support what you guys are doing?
So I think there's a ton of ways to support. There's really endless ways of supporting. You can support financially, you can support socially, physically. We have these events, these sporting events. We're starting a new one with Glenbrook North High School. We're still working on that. But really, I think the best way to support is having the 3-on-3 basketball tournament for the longest time, until it grew too big for us to organize. So, I think the best way to support is come and get a team together and play at our event. We haven't set a date for the summer of 2016 yet. We'll be doing that soon. But also even volunteering at the events. It's just a great time. We usually have 100 to 150 people at these events, and it's all fun. It's free food. You get basketball, prizes, all sorts of things. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. You can contact me at Zach, Z-A-C-H, at curateonthecourt.org. You can visit our website, curateonthecourt.org, for more information for any of these events.
So this is curateonthecourt.org?
Yes, curateonthecourt.org.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, I will link that in the show notes for our audience. So you mentioned a cool point. So it's kind of gotten to the point now where you can't really manage it like a for fun thing, right? Because it's so big.
It's grown. I used to have fun playing in the event, but now it's, we actually have to organize it. Like, we have to manage it, I guess. It kind of just used to run itself because it was small, and over time it's continued to grow. So now we've had to add more volunteers and a whole staff to kind of coordinate the event.
So talk about that transition and what you've learned from that.
Sure. So I think when we first set out, really important thing is to surround yourself with good people who have like-minded goals, like-minded dreams. Whether it's a mentor in the field, and we contacted a ton of people who had done events and have started foundations. So establishing a network of people is extremely important when you get started and when you know what you want. So obviously the first thing is knowing what you want. But then to grow a foundation, you have to kind of plant your feet in the ground, and then you have to do that by educating yourself about what it takes to reach your goals. And we did that by talking to people who have successful foundations. We have a contact at the University of Chicago who's been fantastic over the time we've spent, but also surrounding yourself with the people who have like-minded goals. And to really grow a foundation, you can't do it by yourself. I have a great group of executive board members, we've called them, but they're in charge of this foundation as much as I am. And they help guide any kind of growth. So, we started off with a few of my best friends, Shane Massel, Jason Krause, Matt Rosenberg, Allison Movish, Brooke Bodart, my brother, Jonathan Bulwa, and our friends and family. And over time, our networks have grown. We've all gone in different directions. And each volunteer, each board member is kind of pulled from their own networks to bring in volunteers, to bring in players. And that's the way we've really grown our foundation, especially a small foundation. We've been proud to grow kind of grassroots, the grassroots way. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you really believed in it from the beginning, all of you guys, and you just went word of mouth was the key.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think word of mouth is, and then you get the people who participate in the event. Obviously you need a fun, safe, enjoyable environment for these events, for fundraising. And I think that's key. You have people who have now played in our event 8 years and will be playing in it a 9th year, and that just continues to grow. I think that's so important, is to have that group of people that are invested in what you do. And then the other aspect that we've just begun to tap in on is is our own communities, the communities we came from. So I went to Glenbrook North High School in Northbrook, and last year we reached out to them, and well, actually this is a few years back, but they were kind enough to start an event with us called the Cure on the Court Classic, and we had 6 high school basketball teams as part of the regular season play in what we called a shootout or the Cure on the Court Classic at University of Chicago's Ratner Center, which is where the University of Chicago team plays. And now they're going to do a radiothon with us this year, and I think just going back to the people that helped you get started, and then showing them that return of kindness, I guess, is very important. So Glenbrook North High School is where I grew up going to, and now it's full circle. I feel like we're supporting them, they're supporting us, and we really built a nice partnership with Glenbrook North.
That's really cool. Well, as far as your medical career would go, what advice, insights would you share with anyone who is like just starting medical school to help them get through the grind you went through?
It's a grind. It totally is. I don't think there's really any way of truly preparing. It comes easier to some people. Some people it's much harder for. There's no way of comparing undergraduate to medical school. What you do in a week of undergraduate, you probably do in a day or a few hours of medical school. So they really cram it in. It's great. You get hit with all this knowledge, but it's good. And for somebody who's entering, the most important thing is that you want to do it. Is that's what you want to do, because it is such a grind. And this is with medical school, but anything else, is that you have to have a passion for what you're doing, even if you don't know exactly what you want to do, to have an idea. And so for me, that was, I knew I wanted to help people, and that's seriously as simple as it was for me to join medicine. Now you can do that in a bunch of different ways. You can do that from fundraising, you can do that volunteering, but I wanted to solve problems and help people and answer their questions whenever they needed it the most, and that's when you're sick. So that's why I went into medical school. And I think for anybody that's deciding to go into medical school, to really think why they want to do it and make sure it's what they want, because there are days where you're just thinking, why am I doing this? Whether it's the debt, whether it's the schoolwork, whether it's sometimes competition, not at my school, but at some schools it can be very competitive. And kind of going back to why you want to do it and seeing that light at the end of the tunnel is extremely important. So for me, it wasn't that I'm going into the field of neurology, and that's dealing with the brain and the nervous system. And I didn't know that I wanted to do that going into medical school, but I knew that I wanted to help people, and I've kind of fallen onto this field and I love it. And it's all because it's just that basic concept of wanting to help people, wanting to problem solve. And no matter how rough the day is or how much debt you're in or how tough it looks, knowing that that's the end goal is something that's really important.
Right. So it sounds like when things got really challenging, you reflected on how you were going to be helping people.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the other thing is I've been blessed to have gone through medical school with 2 of my best friends and many more friends that I've met along the way. And, if there's a few key ingredients to how to be successful or at least finish the path to success or to your dream, I think surrounding yourself with the right people, finding a mentor, those things are extremely important. That I can relate that to my charity foundation. I can relate that to my path through medical school. Having a mentor who's been through it, who you can call when you say, I just can't see that light at the end of the tunnel, talk to me. That's so key. It's very important. And then having people that are going through it with you at that same time, whether it's your best friends in my charity foundation or your best friends going through the trials and tribulations of medical school. That's so important and so helpful to get through those tough times.
So what would you say has been the toughest part of the journey for you?
Well, that's a great question. I think the hardest part is the sacrifices you have to make. I think you really have to make a lot of sacrifices to achieve your goals. Financially, sure, you make a ton of sacrifices, but you're spending a lot of time doing that one thing. And for medical school, it's studying. It could be traveling. It could be, for some people, I was lucky enough to go to medical school not too far from home. I lived at home for 2 years. A lot of my friends are at medical school with me because I live in the same state. But for some people, their sacrifice is moving away from home for 4 years. So I think that when you set that goal, or you follow through with your dream of going through medical school, and you set that goal of graduating and be a doctor, you have to realize that you're going to make a lot of sacrifices. You're spending a lot of your early 20s, at the library. And that's tough. It's very difficult. But at the end of the day, if it's what you want to do, and if you think that's the right path for you, you have to make those sacrifices to get to that end goal.
Well, and besides your why, I mean, how did you get to yourself to make those sacrifices over and over again?
Well, once you kind of you get in to a point where there's no looking back, and I think it's good. I think in medical school it's early on, and I'm not even kidding. I think the financial burdens of medical school sometimes push you in that direction. After a year of medical school, you're in so much debt. You think, how can I not do it? And how can I not finish this? I'm already in so much debt. And it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing because it pushes you to finish. It pushes you to finish medical school. But you have to really like it. You have to like it a lot. And I love reading. I love learning. I love being able to go to a hospital at 7 o'clock in the morning and somebody's been up all night in horrible pain, and I can say, this is what we're going to do. We're going to solve your pain today, or we're going to give them a plan to get better. And that is the most rewarding thing. You're giving to somebody else, but you just feel so good about giving. And when you know that that's the end goal, you can put up with some of the sacrifices. So, and now you get to it. I think the first 2 years of medical school, it's spent in the books, in the classroom. Second 2 years are spent with patients, and that's really, really what's important to me. It's my end goal, treating patients, and I can look back and say all those sacrifices were worth it. But also knowing that that is the end goal, and when you're going through the sacrifices, you're making the sacrifices, and you're going through those tough times, knowing that what you're going to do is helping somebody else and is what you really want to do. That helps. That helps get through those tough times.
Yeah, well, that's good to know. I mean, I honestly hadn't even thought about that. I mean, making those sacrifices so you can do that inspiring work. And I want to go back to an interesting point you made earlier. You jumped into medical school and you didn't know exactly what field you wanted to get into. You knew that you just wanted to be there. And I think that's half the battle when you're chasing your dreams is getting in there and experiencing it, and you will figure out where you want to go. And like you said, with the massive amount of debts, that's a scary thing because we're taught to be afraid of debt, just like the way we're wired. And I think just, encouraging people to say, hey, like, you got to try it out. You're never going to know if you don't at least try it out. And for you got in and you figured out where you wanted to go, which is awesome.
I just had this conversation last night with my fiance, and it's so true. I think that we're taught to kind of hone in on our passion at such an early age. You got to find your passion. You really have to find your passion, but you got to take a step back and look more broadly. For example, I'm looking at our mission statement right now, and it's so broad, but that gives us an opportunity to use our fundraising for a lot of different avenues. And when you step back and say, I just want to help people, how can I do that? I can be a doctor. Okay, great. I don't know exactly which people I'm going to help, how I'm going to help them, but I know that's what I want to do. Then you can go and experience all these different environments, whether it's OBGYN or surgery or internal medicine or neurology. And that's when you can discover what what fits you, but also what you really want to do. So experiencing all aspects of a field, for example, can really help you narrow down. And I don't think you should be you should have too much tunnel vision. I think you should have this wide angle at the start of your dreams.
Yeah, I agree. giving yourself permission to explore, I think, is a big deal. And being willing to make the sacrifices so you can get the permission to explore. Because if you're going to explore other fields while you're working a job like I am, or if you're just looking to get outside of the norm, you're going to have to take some time to explore just because of the way that everything is set up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the unique experience of medical schools, for one, is that you do get to explore all these different options. But it's not always so easy. In medical school, you have to explore. They force you to explore to some extent. But in the real world, I think it's more difficult. I think medical school is in some ways easier in that regard because they allow you to. But I think it's much more challenging when you're in a career, you're kind of set in the path, and to give that up and go explore new fields or your dreams, that's challenging. That's not something that I can really relate to because I've kind of been on this.
Well, yeah, and I mean that's the point of the show, right? Is to have people from different perspectives to share with everyone else. And as far as just getting on the path to your dreams, I think you have to explore. Like, regardless, I think that's just the bottom line.
Absolutely.
So, what would you say you know now that you would share with your younger self as far as advice on what you've experienced, whether it's life or just kind of getting through medical school?
That's a great question. I think you got to enjoy the ride to some extent. Being a well-rounded person and enjoying your hobbies is extremely important in making sure that giving yourself an escape sometimes. So I would say, like, don't give up on those hobbies. You know, you have to make sacrifices, sure, but keep some things close to your heart. I just recently read a book talking about these inventors and how their garage is their workspace. And to me, that was really, really interesting. Where somebody who might, just random example, might be a doctor their whole life. Okay, so they go to their work and they get back and they go to their garage and I don't know, they sculpt, or they, mess around with some kind of instruments, and it's their escape from their job, their duty, and it gives them it's their hobby. It's something that they have unique to them. And I've met so many people in medical school that have these little hobbies, and it's a great way to escape, and also it's a great way to find something that's unique about you, something interesting about you. Whether it be like I met some people who fly planes or play an instrument, and I think those things are great to give yourself a little. I'm trying to find another word for escape, but just something different. Give yourself a break from the reality of and the difficulty of always, going after your dreams, going after your goals. It's challenging, and to have that something you can fall back on once in a while and just escape is really important.
So, what's your hobby?
Oh God, I don't know. I'm not sure. Everyone, I like to read. I really like to read. I don't as often get to work with wood, but I like building like furniture and things like that with wood. And then fantasy football. You got to enjoy fantasy football, right? Everyone likes fantasy football. So
what's on the old bookshelf right now?
I'm reading The Road right now, but let me just show you this. This is a great book. One of the best books I've ever read in my life. How We Got to Now. Very, very good book. But yeah, actually, that's a great book for this conversation. It's about how 6 inventions that made the modern world and how we went from. You learn about the inventors and their paths. It's a fantastic book. Highly recommend it.
So for all my inventors and innovators out there, I'll link that in the show notes.
Please. I think these books are great because you hear about Thomas Edison and inventing the light bulb, but you don't even know that 30 other people were inventing the light bulb at the same time. And what made his different is probably his marketing and advertising abilities, but it just tells you about taking something from nothing and making it something. I think it goes hand in hand with what the show is about. So just kind of coincidence. I just finished reading that book. Great, great book.
That's really cool. Well, and some people may know this about Edison. He literally failed like 10,000 times to make the light bulb.
For
Like,
sure.
that's insane.
Yeah, and actually, his invention of the light bulb was it was pretty much already discovered. It's just that he took it and ran with it, and he didn't want to accept the best invention until like the last possible opportunity. So the light bulb that he created was not his original thought. He was far from the light bulb, and he didn't want to accept the reality of that invention until much later on in the process, which is interesting to me. I know that.
That's a really important point, though, because a lot of the times when you start anything, you're not going to get to the same place that you thought you were. There's this path, right? Because you start and you adapt as you go.
Sure. I think that's a great point with any kind of, we're talking about chasing our dreams, and as much as you can be, set on one goal, I think the path sometimes might be filled with hurdles, and you have to take a different path to find that goal. And whether it's a different field, for my example, I did not think about neurology going in. I thought it was one of the most challenging subjects. I thought I wanted to be an eye doctor, but that's kind of broadened into this field of neurology, and you have to be able to accept. You have to be able to accept failure in a way, but also have to be able to accept a new path in a way, and be willing to take a different road sometimes.
You really do. And that can be a really challenging thing to do, especially if you've put a lot of yourself into something and you've made something exploratory and more of a full-time experience for you. But you got to almost kind of have a quarterly check-in with yourself and say, hey, is this going really where I want it to go? Because like a lot of things, like your dream is going to turn to work. I mean, there's nothing you can do to avoid that. Like the most important thing is about how it makes you feel. And like anything else, you're going to go through the roller coaster. So you just have to keep in mind, because if it's getting to the point where it's like literally making you unhappy and you're just like lost your light, maybe you just need a jump as like why you did it again, or you need to really sit down and evaluate like, hey, am I really doing this for the right reasons? Because sometimes it is better and harder, especially for type A people like me who like hate giving up on stuff, just to give up, and that's okay. Like that, sometimes it's just the way it works out, and that other thing will be right around the corner.
Absolutely, I think that's really well said. And I, just getting back on a thing I touched on earlier, if you have something you can fall back on just for enjoyment's sake, that makes it gives you that escape that I think is extremely important, to just go and clear your mind. And sometimes during those times is when you have your best thoughts. But like you said, it's not so much giving up, it's just changing directions, changing paths. And you have to be willing to do that, accept that sometimes your idea is not perfect, that you need to change your thought process and move forward with that. And I think that's some of the most challenging parts of following your dream and chasing your dream.
Yeah, because you have the thoughts and they keep coming, and you're just like, because to some degree you almost want to ignore it. Like you're so used to ignoring it. And sometimes when you ignore a thought and it like needs to be felt and experienced through you, it just keeps coming and coming and coming, because the thought, it's kind of like saying like you either got to do this or that. And so you just got to pay really close attention to that, because if someone keeps coming back to you, that's a sign that like it's something you need to sit down by yourself and explore like where that's taking you,
Mm-hmm. Sorry, here's my little cat.
Nice, man. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I'll definitely link to the show notes. So cureonthecourt.org is where people can find your nonprofit. Where else can people find you?
I think that's the best way to reach me. Feel free to always call or email me. All my information is on the website. But yeah, cureonthecourt.org. Everything is there. Whether you want to volunteer, fundraise, learn about what we do, learn about new events coming up, contact me. I think that's the best way, easiest way to just get a hold of me.
All right, Doc. Well, I can call you that. When's your official graduation?
It's in June It's the beginning of June this year, June 2016.
I'm just gonna have to shoot you a little congratulations text.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm glad that you got to come on the show. I think this has been great, and I look forward to being in touch, buddy. Thanks for your time.
I appreciate it. Thank you.